welcome to episode 2 of the RFGeneration Community playthrough. I'm your host, Rich, and joining me, as always, are Floyd.
Hey guys, really happy to be here.
Jamie.
Hey, good to be here.
And Shawn.
What's up, everybody?
So, as you probably noticed in episode 1, we were pretty much set up only on YouTube at the beginning, and then we picked up Podomatic. So, we've actually opened up a few other avenues where you can find our show. So, can you guys tell them a little bit more about where they can find us as well?
You can find us on Facebook.
All right.
And iTunes.
And one more spot.
RFGeneration.com.
Absolutely.
The best place to find us.
Absolutely. You can speak with us at any point at RF Generation, and, please join us on the forums there. We love to talk to you and discuss these games, especially during the month. So, this time we're just going to start off and just talk a little bit about ourselves and kind of what we're into as far as video gaming. And I'm going to start off with Floyd.
Hey everyone, so on the forums I go by the handle of Fleach. I'm a long-time gamer, new-time collector. Cut my teeth on the N64 and Super Nintendo. Graduated on to the PS1. My collecting focus is on RPGs and anything sort of action-adventure.
All right, and Jamie.
Hey, I'm Jamie, going by techwizard on the forums. 24 years old. I've been collecting since around 2008, more or less. Grew up gaming pretty early on the NES, and then moved on to like N64, GameCube, and I'll be one of the few who are PC gamers here. And my main collecting focus now is the N64, which I'm going for a full CIB set in. And I think that's me.
All right, and Shawn.
Hey guys, this is Shawn. Go by Grey Ghost 81 on the forums. I've been playing video games since I was about 5 years old. I'm 32 years old now, so it's been a long time. I've been collecting on and off pretty much for that whole time, but I started collecting seriously about 3 years ago with the collection I have now. At first it was just collecting anything and everything that I found out in the wild, but now I'm starting to trim it down and collect only the best and finest pieces. And my favorite platform is the PlayStation 2, and I'm always looking for obscure, noteworthy, cool PlayStation 2 games.
Hint, hint. If anyone wants to send something his way.
Yeah, I do accept donations.
Especially RPG donations. I've seen his list.
Yeah, the podcast is run off of Shawn's PS2 collection.
All right, thanks, guys. Well, of course, I'm Rich. I'm the host of the show, and you can find me on the forums as Singlebanana. A lot of you probably know me on there. I probably started collecting about 5 years ago. My primary focus, of course, is the NES and my Atari 2600 collection, and I also collect pretty heavily for the Vectrix. I only need a few more games for that. For my NES collection, I'm down to actually 5 games now for a complete license set. I've got a little something in the works with old Crab Master, and should be getting a few more soon. So, yeah, love to talk about Nintendo and Atari stuff. Definitely the old guy in the group. I'm 37, and I believe, Shawn, you said you're 32, and let's see, Jamie and Floyd, I believe you guys are 23, right?
24 for me.
24, okay.
Yeah. We're the youngins of the group. So.
The youngins, exactly. So
just try to keep up with us.
Right, and that's what's going to kind of make this show special. It seems that we all have different interests as far as retro and modern, and different, variation in age, which is just going to make, the discussions, all the more rich. And so definitely looking forward to this podcast and the future of it. So, But anyway, just want to thank everyone for joining us in this podcast. We hope you enjoy this wrap-up for the April playthrough. We did Magical Starsign and also the Atari 2600 Activision Challenge, which was a very interesting month. And actually, for the Atari Challenge, we're going to have a special guest join us. I'll leave that secret until then. But anyway, let's get started, guys. So for the April retro playthrough, we did the Atari Activision Challenge, which we played several familiar and maybe some unfamiliar games to most of you. We played, in week 1 we did Pitfall and Kaboom. In week 2 we played Spider Fighter and Sequest. Week 3 was Stampede and Keystone Capers. Week 4 was Enduro and Skyjinx. And we had a special game, kind of a little playoff at the end with one of our members, myself, Singlebanana, and one of our members, BSR 241, which his name is actually Terry, and he's going to be joining us today to talk about these games. And also is one of my other co-hosts, Floyd. He'll be joining us as well. So thanks for coming on, guys. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Yeah, as an Atari virgin, this will be really exciting.
So you didn't actually play any this month, did you, Floyd?
No, but I tracked you guys in the thread, and it really made me wish I had an Atari console and really wished I had these games because it looked like it was a lot of fun.
Well, I tell you what, I picked one up this weekend, so maybe this one's got your name on it. We'll discuss that after the call. So anyway, we played it this month with a similar format to what we did with the Streets of Rage challenge in 2013 December, and I want to say I had a really great time playing the playthrough this way, and I hope that everyone who joined us really enjoyed the format that I use. I tried to make it as fair as possible in accumulating and dispersing the points. But just to kind of start out, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to the people who actually played this month. And those included myself, of course, Terry, BSR 241, Bomba Tamba, Dougley 007, Wimpster, and Jerry Greenwood. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about the games. And Terry, what I'd like to do is you and I sort of talk about the games. Floyd, if you have any questions, please jump in, and what we'll do is we'll just discuss them a little bit and then maybe talk a little bit about our strategies for those games. Okay?
All right.
So the first game we played was Pitfall. That's a very classic 2600 game. It came out, I think I read that it was like the number 2 or number 3 best-selling game of all time for the Atari 2600. And Terry, do you remember when this game came out?
No, not offhand.
Not offhand? I remember when it came out pretty much, and it was a very popular title. It was one of those that you didn't see a whole lot of video gaming commercials back then, but this game, there was a lot of hype surrounding Atari Pitfall from Activision. And this game sort of, you start out, you play as Pitfall Harry, who's your hero, and the goal of the game is to jump around and basically collect diamond rings, gold bars, silver bars, and money bags. Those are your 4 items that you're collecting, and that's how you score points. And there is actually this game, and of course, playing this as a kid, I didn't really know it, but this game actually has a kill screen. If you accumulate, I believe it's 114,000 points, you make it to what's called like a kill screen where everything just goes blank. And you have 20 minutes to collect all the items in the game. And you can lose points. You have 3 lives, and you can lose lives, or you can lose points when you run into logs or fall into a pit, right? So Terry, was this one that you played a lot, or kind of growing up? Was this one that you played a lot?
I don't remember playing this one a lot. I remember playing it some, but I never got to the end of it, as far as I remember.
Right. I actually tried to get to the end of it in this playthrough, and it's actually became one of those things where I got a little obsessed with playing this game. I probably played this one more than any of the others, because one, it was at the beginning of the challenge, and then two, it was just, knowing that it had a kill screen, it was like, oh man, I got to do that, and so now that is one of my goals, to at least get that kill screen, and then after that, maybe shoot for that perfect score, without running in any logs or falling down any pits. What type of strategy did you use for this game, Terry?
I used like the first big underground passage, and then I stayed away from them because I was terrible at jumping the scorpions.
Yeah, the scorpions they're a little more, I guess, oblong, and they run really slow, so it's a different feel than like jumping the logs, because you can just kind of stand still and jump the logs; they'll kind of roll right under you. Did you go to the right of the screen, or did you do the backwards method for that?
Oh, I went backwards.
You went backwards, yeah. I didn't think about doing the backwards method. The first few scores I put up, I did the forward method because I guess when you're a kid, you don't really think about going backwards. You're kind of naturally, when you play a video game, you naturally want to go to the right. It's like reading. You read a book.
That seems like the common sense or logical approach, right? Just
right.
Try to move along.
Yeah, and I think it was Shadow Kursaragi, who said something about, which way are you going? Why are you not going? He saw my end screen. He's like, why are you not going to the left? And I was like, well, I've never really thought about going to the left. And so I started that, and it's actually a little bit better because when you have logs and things like that, you don't have to jump over the logs. You run at the same speed as the logs do, so what you can do is you can just run through the entire screen, and it actually saves you a lot of time going to the left. So I tried that, and that's how I put up my, I think I put up my biggest score going that way.
So basically that would be, instead of moving to the obstacles, you're letting the obstacles come to you?
Well, instead of probably the opposite, Floyd. Instead of the obstacles coming to you, like the logs rolling at you, because everything rolls from right to left.
Right.
And so if you go backwards and you keep up your normal run, you keep the hammer down, so to speak, keep your controller joystick down, you could just keep moving along, and the logs would not catch up with you. It'd be like kind of running right at your heels, and if you stopped, you would probably get hit. But, with other obstacles such as pits and the lakes and things like that, sometimes you would have to kind of stop and then jump and let the logs go by you, So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were there any other special techniques that you used, Terry, or, during this game?
For the crocodiles, learn to time the jump so you can jump, stop, and then jump off the third one with his mouth closed.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I got it down where I could go all the way. It was a little hard going backwards because on that third crocodile you really have to hit that snout. Did you do any jumping while the crocodile's mouths were open?
Yeah,
like from eye to eye?
I tried not to because the landing pad is just way too small.
Yeah. That's a tough jump, and it's one of those games where it's not like you can't really control your jump, like move back and forth. You just kind of have a jump, and it's going to go. It's just going to go a certain amount. So that last crocodile, especially if you're going backwards, you got to kind of jump off the tip of the snout to make it, to the other side.
Yeah.
Floyd, since you've never really played this game, but you've probably watched it, with the crocodiles, they open their mouths, so you can jump and you can rest on their eyes, but you can't.
Okay.
But if you're too close to their mouth and you open their mouth up, it'll kind of suck you down. So. But yeah,
it's a little bit of like rhythm incorporated into it. Like you need to have the right pace of flow, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really a timing game, and to from what I've seen, and since the playthrough's been over, I've actually watched one of the kill screen videos, and it's really amazing, like watching someone do that. You really have to, you have to really be fast because there are, I think 250 something screens on this game, so you have to be really fast because you have a 20-minute time limit. So basically, you have 20 minutes or 3 lives, whichever comes first. So it's pretty tough. So anyway, I think we've kind of covered Pitfall pretty well. I think I ended up winning the Pitfall challenge that month. For the month, and pretty pleased with my score. But once again, I'd still like to improve that. Maybe try to get to that kill screen, and maybe after that shoot for that perfect score at some point. So I'm gonna have to get back and play and learn some of those patterns. So the other game we played in week one was sort of the classics week where we played 2 of the more popular games. We played Pitfall, of course, and then we played Kaboom was the other game we played, which utilizes the paddle controllers. How did you end up in that game, Terry? I'm trying to recall.
Pretty terrible.
I believe, and don't quote me on this, I'm not looking at the page right now. I need to pull that up at some point, but I believe I might have been the only one to get the badge on that one. I think that was 3,000 points?
Yeah, 3,000.
Yeah, 3,000. It's a tough game, and what's funny is I happened to be on Atari Age, and I saw where a guy had just gotten 999,999 points on that game, like had hit the maximum points on it.
Yeah, I'm
like, wow. I don't know how anybody could do that, and then keep their sanity in trying to do that.
No, not one bit.
I mean, we're talking about a game where we had a lot of, we had 6 people, participating, and not one of us could, was barely eked out a badge, and that was it. So that was a tough game. Kaboom is a game where you've got a robber who's dropping these bombs down, and you have, they're called bomb buckets is what they're called. They're these 3 little platforms, like little breakout paddles, and you're moving those back and forth, and each time a bomb gets by you, and these bombs get progressively faster, you lose one of those paddles, and the game gets harder and harder. Every 1,000 points you get an extra paddle, so if you do lose one, you can always build on that, which is kind of a nice feature to have. But still, at the rate those things start falling, it gets so chaotic, and it gets pretty tough. Were there any type of strategies that you tried to implement for Kaboom?
No, none whatsoever. I couldn't. It was hard enough keeping up with them after a while. The only thing I did was take my controllers apart and cleaned them up so they'd slide a little better.
Oh, really? Can you talk to us a little bit about how you did that?
Well, it's got 4 screws in the back. Take them all apart. You've got just a regular pot in there.
Right.
And I'd grab some contact cleaner and sprayed them out and put them all back together, and it helped some, but
yeah, I've heard of a lot of people doing that. That's not something that I've attempted. I think I just go by the route of, I come across these things all the time, these paddles for like $1. And so I'll just pick them up when I can find them, and some work better than others, and probably could just take them apart, a few of them, and just use a good cleaning. And I think you can replace I'm trying to think of the name of the part that's in the inside.
It's just a potentiometer.
Potentiometer, that's right. And I think you can buy those parts somewhere and just replace those. But you said just a good contact cleaning usually works. Is that right?
It makes a big difference, yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll have to check that out. Yeah, for Kaboom, I guess my thing was, my strategy was to, at least make it to 1,000 points with at least 2. If I got down to 1, I would just, my hand was so close to the reset button, and that for me, that was kind of what I did, was just, in order to get the score I got, it was just repetitive playing. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I'm horrible at that game, but it was just one of those things where I would just, if I felt like I was in a bad groove, I would just hit the reset button, and it was just, trying to eke out as many plays as I could on that game. So, So I guess that's it for Kaboom. Floyd, did you have any questions about Kaboom, or have you seen the gameplay for that game?
No, I haven't. But no, the way you guys described it was pretty good. It gives me a good mental picture.
Yeah. It's just just a game of chaos, and they just kind of keep dropping the bombs, and everything just gets faster and faster, and just typical Atari game. I think at one point the speed levels out so that it doesn't get any faster, but I think some people say that there's a pattern to the bombs. I didn't see that. I didn't see any type of pattern, but I'm sure the guys that are just the best players probably have figured that out in some sense.
Yeah, those games where the speed of the game ramps up are things that I'm really terrible at. So I probably would have become really frustrated with that game and rage quit.
Yeah.
So we moved on to week 2. I was after week 1 I was feeling pretty good about my play. I was like, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good here. And then week 2, old Terry came along in week 2, and we played some Spider Fighter. Terry, you want to talk about that game for a little bit? Maybe describe what goes on in Spider Fighter?
It's basically a heads-up shmup, and they come out of with the left side of the screen and spread out from there.
Uh-huh.
And just a lot of quick back and forth shooting and dodging.
Yeah. And I think I've mentioned this before on the either on the forums, is that the Spider Fighter for me is my favorite shooter on the 2600. I know that the 2600 has quite a few shooter games, but for me, there's something about Spider Fighter, and just it's a very frantic, quick, fast-paced game. Like Terry was saying, it starts. I guess kind of the theme is you're the owner or a farmer at an orchard, and the spiders are attacking your crops. And they've incorporated this. It's a really neat idea into a shooter. So you're basically firing what equates to like pesticide at these spiders. And there's this sort of nest that floats around, and spiders kind of spring from it. And the nest can actually grab your fruit from your trees and take it to the other side. And if they capture your fruit, you don't get as much bonus, and it also affects your score in the game. But with Spider Fighter, there's 2 options that you can use when you're firing. One of those can be like straight firing. You can set it to fire straight under the options. Or what you can do is you can also have a fire where the shots kind of move. You can kind of use guided shots. Jerry, which of those did you use?
I preferred the straight shots.
Yeah, and I think I use the guided shots. I don't know why. I guess it's kind of how I was used to playing the game. But yeah, the straight shots are just a great way to play it too. And what was your strategy for this game? I know you put up I want to say over 200,000 on this game. Is that right?
I think it's somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, you blew it out of the water. That was one of the games on the Royal Rumble week. I'm like, you know what? I'm not even gonna try. I'm not even gonna try to attack that game if I'm gonna make up some points here. Because going into like week 4, you had jumped ahead of me, and I was like, I'm not even gonna try to make it up on Spider Fighter. Forget that. That was hopeless. So can you tell me a little bit about the strategy you used there?
I basically hung off the left side, about an inch off the left side, and waited for the nest to come out, and just tried to blast the crud out of it before it could even come out.
Yeah. I mean, that was pretty much the strategy, and I think I'd mentioned that on the forums. I was like, well, guys, try going to the left, start out to the left, and just like you said, just multi-fire. And it seems to me, and maybe you can speak to this as well, as you move on through the game, I felt like my shots got a lot quicker. Is that true? Did that hold true for you?
I don't know. There was 2 ways of shooting. You could either hold it down and it would shoot, I think 4 or 5 in a row.
Okay.
Or you could individually, one at a time, and I preferred the one at a time so I could move around and shoot at the same time, because that holding it down, I felt like I was missing opportunities to hit them.
Right. And some of those spiders get really close to the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
And almost impossible to get away from. So So I hear what you're saying, and yeah, you're right. I mean, you did have the option of holding the button down. Was that something that you did when you went to the left side of the screen? Did you kind of hold it down at first to fire off a lot of shots and try to clear out that nest before it moved to the right?
That'd be the first one I'd do, but then after it got by, I'd start individual firing.
Right, yeah, and when each time you clear a board, I think there I want to say I'm recalling from memory here. There are like 3 nests. Is that correct? And every 3 nests, you move on to the next board. Is that right?
It was 3. I think it was 3 or 4. Yeah.
Okay, right. And so you would also accumulate extra men as you move to the next board, which was always nice. I thought you would always get, so if you lost 2 or 3, you would get 1 extra after you cleared a board, and then if you had all of your men and you cleared a board, you got like a bonus, and I believe it was around 500 points, something like that, that you got for actually clearing that board and having all your ships. Instead of getting the extra ship, you just got an added bonus to your score.
Yeah.
Which was always nice. But yeah, clearly you are the king of Spider Fighter, sir. That's one of my favorite games, and still remains my favorite game or favorite shooter on the 2600. So also in week 2 we played another really fun shooter. I do want to mention before I get into the next game we played, I was considering River Raid. That's a very popular game for the 2600, probably one of the most known Activision titles, probably the best known Activision shooter. And I just kind of decided, I want to do a few games. I want to keep the games inexpensive, first of all, but I would like to kind of push people to play a few games that maybe they hadn't played before. And so instead of doing River Raid, I decided to do Sequest, which is a really neat submarine shooter. You have basically 3 enemies in the game, right?
Yeah.
And you have, you've got the submarines, enemy submarines at the bottom of the screen. You've got sharks, and then you've got a sort of a sub at the top of the screen as well that can attack you. And the point of the game is basically you fire off and you collect divers. And once you get enough divers, you can go to the top and resurface and deliver those divers, or basically save those divers that are underwater. If you don't have enough divers, you can go back up to the top anyway, but you actually lose 1 diver. And sort of the caveat of this game is that you have an air meter, which allows you to only to stay underwater for a certain time. And this isn't bad at first. It's fairly easy to deal with the air situation at first, but it gets a lot more difficult, right? Did you have any certain strategies for this game, Terry?
I think my biggest strategy was trying to stay at the top 2 rows of the screen.
Okay.
Because as it sped up, the air supply seemed to go faster.
Right. And you would always try to fill up, if you could, try to get as many divers as you could, but it seems like as the game progressed, you were just trying to unload them as much as you could, right?
Yeah.
And the problem with unloading at the top of the screen is it makes you pause at the top of the screen, and there's a submarine that goes across the top of the screen, and if you're stuck unloading divers and refilling on air, and that submarine comes by while you're doing that, you lose a life that way as well. So you have to kind of time your air and then time that submarine that's moving across the top of the screen. For this game, I noticed one of the things that I did notice about it is it got more frantic. It got harder to collect divers. But if you could get a bead on a certain area and just keep firing, you would end up getting divers at some point. They would come out, and then you could, basically take out all those people and then, pick up your divers as quick as you can. Another thing that I noticed is that there are basically 3 rows of enemies coming out at you, and you could put your sub, if you could move it just right, you could put your sub in between those rows and everything would miss you, like coming back and forth. So if you got in trouble, if something started getting a little too out of hand or quick for you, you could take a little bit of a break and just sit between those rows. Did you implement any of those strategies or notice anything like that about the game?
I tried to stay between a couple rows, but with the way the sharks waved up and down, sometimes they would get you, sometimes not.
Yeah.
I think the thing that got me the most was if you were trying to catch the divers, and then for some reason the little jerks would turn around and swim away from you.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out either. You know, basically the sharks sometimes will grab the divers by the leg and push them forward, but then when you would shoot the sharks, they would turn around the other way and start swimming the other way. I couldn't figure out that pattern either, and sometimes, you know, there's really nothing you could do about it. You know, you had to just kind of play it by ear, collect them when you can, maybe get the shark to grab one and bring it closer to you before you actually shot the sharks. And you know, I found myself using that strategy as well.
Yeah,
so
you almost had to wait till they were in the middle of the screen to start shooting the sharks, so you'd have time to get over there to get them.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was a tough game, but I thought all in all, week 2 went really well. I think you obviously ended up winning Spider Fighter, and I think I eked out, like on the last night, a Sequest score that was just a little better than yours, and was able to kind of keep my lead. But you know, after I saw the score Terry put up in Spider Fighter, I was like, oh man, I knew what was coming, because you put up a great score in Sequest too. So week 3 was a very tough week, I think, for everyone. I think I called this week the thrill of the hunt, which was sort of a theme. We played Stampede and we played Keystone Capers. Both of these games were the type of games where you would either track someone or track some things down. We'll start talking about Stampede first. This was the only game during this challenge that no one badged. No one was able to earn a badge on Stampede. And I'm trying to think, it was, I think it was, am I right, 3,000 or 3,500 points, something like that, I believe was the badge. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not even sure about that one.
Yeah. To me, this was probably the hardest game of the lot. And I had a really tough time with this game. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with it?
I actually like this game. I used to play this a lot when I was a kid with my cousins, and we used to play this one just a bunch. So I really like this game. I mean, it's right up there as a good one for me.
Yeah, it's a difficult game, but I'm with you. I love it. It's a lot of fun. The strategy is really sort of bewildering at first. You know, I mean, if you don't know what you're doing in this game, then it can be one of the most frustrating games you'll play. Basically, there's 4 different colored cattle. You're basically a cowboy riding the back of a horse, and you're trying to rope cattle, and you have 4 different colored cattle. I think there's a yellow, an orange, a brown, and a black. The yellow cattle are the slowest, from what I remember. I want to. Are they the fastest?
I think the bright yellow ones were the fastest.
Yeah, you're right. The yellow were the fastest, and then the orange are sort of medium speed, and then I think your brown are a little slower, and then your black cow is stationary, which is the toughest of them all, because you can't run into him. You have to lasso him. So the object of the game is to not let 3 cows pass you, right?
Yeah.
And you use the strategy. You don't have to lasso all the cows at one time. When you start getting closer to them, if you run into the cattle, it makes them run forward quickly, and so you can keep bouncing them off and then catch them later. And one of the strategies I think some of us were using, and Terry, you can vouch for this too, is instead of trying to lasso the cattle, because throwing out your lasso, it basically, throwing that lasso out takes up your movement. You can't move, and if you throw it out a long way, you have to wait for it to retract before you can even move, and so that can really hurt you as a player. So one of the strategies I think a lot of people started to implement was when you bump the cattle and make them run forward, throwing that lasso out real quick for those quick grabs. And and scoring a lot of points that way. Was that the case with you? Is that how you usually play the game?
Yeah. I would keep on bumping a group of them up and snag them one at a time, and that way you wouldn't have a lot of the black ones coming, because you always tried to keep 4 lanes with something in them. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of pretty much ignored the black ones.
Oh, really?
I mean, you almost have to be in that, when it got faster, you almost had to be in that lane to get them.
Yeah.
And it was
okay.
It was almost just easier just to skip them and make sure you get all the rest of them.
Right. That's a good point. And I think the way it worked was, I want to say after so many points, and I can't remember what the amount was, maybe around 1,000, you would get like a cattle forgiveness or something like that, where it would like if you had missed one cattle and you had like 2 basically like lives left, it would give you sort of like an extra life or an extra miss.
Yeah.
So, but for some reason, for me, I didn't even think about ignoring the black cattle, but that would have been a good strategy, even though, like, I think at the kind of the beginning part of the game, you get hit with 2 pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But toward the beginning of the game, I think it's easier to grab those, because everything's not quite as frantic yet,
Yeah, the first 2 you knew they were coming. You almost knew where they were going to be.
Right.
But then once it got busy, you couldn't remember where they were at. You were just bumping everybody else and trying to keep up with them.
Yeah. So again, Stampede is a wonderful Activision title. If you've got an Activision, if you've got an Atari, you're looking for Activision titles, I think Stampede is one that you should definitely add to your collection. And then we played Keystone Capers, which is a game that I didn't play growing up. I didn't know a whole lot about Keystone Capers going into it. But you want to just kind of give us a little bit of an overview about what that game was?
Keystone Capers. The guy was shoplifting in the store, and you have to play the store detective and chase him down before he gets out the doors. And you have to dodge everything, or jump radios and dodge airplanes. And I like that. That one was a fun game, too. That was fun back in the day. It's still fun now.
Yeah.
Sounds like it could be really exciting.
It is. And again, Floyd, it's one of those games that has after you go through so many levels, it gets faster and faster. One of the things that, the crook kind of starts out, I want to say, on the second floor, and you're on the first floor, and there are 1, 2, 3, I think 3 floors in a roof. I'm correct on that, right?
Yeah.
And the thief can only use the escalator, but he can go up and down on the escalator.
Yeah.
You can only go up on the escalator, but you can also use the elevators, which are located in the center of the shopping mall is what we would call it. So the elevators can be quite useful depending on, your timing. Terry, how did you use the elevators in this game? Did you use them at all? Or,
I used them a lot. When he was coming on the 3rd floor, I would ride the elevator up, and once it opened the door, he would turn around and go back the other way. Mm-hmm. And then he would get to the end. You could go back down the next floor and come up, and you'd have a little more time to catch him.
Okay. So you're saying you would go straight to the 3rd floor? Is that right?
Yeah, I would go to the 3rd floor, and he'd already be up there. And once the door opened, apparently he saw you, so he turned around and started going back down to the 2nd floor. And the elevator would close, and you go down the 2nd floor. So by the time he was at the escalator, you'd be coming off the escalator or the elevator on the 2nd floor, so you'd have lots of time to run down and get back up to him on the 3rd floor.
Okay. I think what I did in my strategy was just to go to the 2nd floor, and then just kind of run from there. But I see what you're saying about kind of turning him back around, and then he would go back down the escalator, and then you would go from the 3rd floor back down to the 2nd floor, and then chase him from there, and you'd be a little bit closer. Because the important part of this game really is to maximize your time. The quicker you catch the crook, the more bonus you get, right?
Oh yeah.
And you do have a certain amount of lives in this game, and I believe the only thing that can kill you in this game, everything else is sort of like, well, I was going to say it's sort of like Pitfall in the sense that you have things that won't kill you, but these things that don't kill you, they eat up your time, which is about as bad, if not worse, than actually killing you, right?
Yeah, they really knock the time down fast.
Yeah. So, my strategy was to go to the second floor, and then by the time I got to the second floor, a lot of times he was already on the escalator. I would just escalate up to the third floor and then, end up catching him. But it seems like with your strategy, you had a better way of sort of pinning him in and keeping him, closer to you than what I was doing, which is awesome, which is a great strategy and something that I really didn't think about. So awesome. So you really do like Keystone Capers. It's one you would say this is one of your favorite games from the Activision series?
Yeah. It was just such nice graphics and such original gameplay from then, and it still stands up today.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does have some of the best graphics on the system. Yeah, it's a lot more detailed and a lot more than some of the other Atari games that are out there for sure. Okay. So week 4 was, I decided to do sort of a race week. I am not a big fan of racing games, and it sort of showed during this week. Week 4 we played Enduro, and then we also played Skyjinx. Enduro, I've always heard by a lot of people, as a lot of people say, is their favorite racing game for the Atari 2600. I'm a big fan of Night Driver, which was just a regular release by Atari, but Enduro is sort of like its title sounds, right? It's an endurance race. What's neat about Enduro is that you're racing through days. You're trying to accumulate so many days, and I think that's how we track score, through days and through mileage on this game. And as you go through the day, you get different conditions. You get snow. You've got just normal day weather. You've got dusk. You've got dawn. You've got night driving, where all you can see are the car's tail lights. And then you've got one of the toughest courses of the game, which is fog, which basically you don't see anything but the tail lights, and you don't see them until about half of the screen, right? They don't appear till like half the screen, so you have to kind of react quick. Can you tell me a little bit about what strategy you used for this, Terry? I mean, did you just go full blast through this game and dodge cars, or how did you work your strategy into this game?
Mostly full blast, stay in the middle and go full blast, but then when it hit like the fog, slowed down to about half, so you had more time to react to it.
Yeah. I tried, and again, I wasn't very successful at this game, and what I tried was to get I didn't go full blast at any point. For some reason, I just don't have the reaction time for this game. But what I would do is keep it at a constant, like, I guess about a 3/4 sort of speed, and just go through the level. Basically the goal of the game is to pass a certain amount of cars, right? I believe that the first board it's 200, and then the second board and every subsequent board is 300 cars.
Yeah.
But it gets a lot tougher. So, as far as the cars are concerned. So the quicker you pass the cars, the quicker you make it through the level, and then you just do some, I guess basically it's just some free driving, right? You don't get any points or anything, and you don't get any bonus or anything like that for finishing up early. And you just kind of drive around until the next day starts, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start passing cars again. So Enduro was for me, a very tough game, and it definitely earns its name. It is an endurance game, and I've seen some people play this game and just, make it to, day 9 or something like that, and it's I don't know how they do it, but it's a fun game. I enjoy it. I would say, if you get it for $1 or $2, pick it up. I think it's one you would definitely enjoy for the 2600. And then secondly, we played in week 4 we played the game Skyjinx, which is basically an airplane racer, and it's sort of I would compare it to, think of like slalom racing in the Olympics, right?
Yeah, that'd probably be a good analogy.
You've got a red tower and you've got a blue tower, and you got to kind of weave in and out, and you also have to dodge obstacles like hot air balloons and what were some of the other obstacles? Trees, I guess. I think those were the two main obstacles that you had to dodge in this game. and you're just basically trying to finish the course, and get to the end of the course, and basically whoever has the best time, was the winner for that month. Did you? There's some tight turns, and kind of making your playing bank and kind of swinging it can make your playing go tighter. Was that kind of your strategy, Terry? Did you just go full blast during this game? Were there points where you had to slow down, or
I think
how did you work it?
I think I slowed down maybe a couple times for the balloons.
Mm-hmm.
That way you could still make the curve on the next marker.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think a lot of it was just memorization of the course.
Right.
Once you had it down, it was just getting the timing right.
Right. And there were several courses on this game. Of course, with all these games, and I guess I should kind of tell our listeners, the people who didn't play with us this month, we played every game on the first screen. Right. It was just. For me, I thought it would just be easier for everyone to start on the same screen, and try to finding, different difficulty or different course levels, and I just wanted to make it as accessible as I could while we were playing that. But I think, Terry, I believe you had the quickest score in that game.
Yeah.
If I recall, I can't remember, but yeah, again, I finished a close second. It seemed that you and I were really going back and forth, with the, of course, the person who finished the highest got 10 points for each game. The second place got 9 points. And so you and I were going back and forth there for a while with 9 and 10 points. And then, lo and behold, week 4, you'd had a little bit of a lead there. I believe I want to say you were up by about 4 points or so.
Yeah.
And so I knew I had a little bit of work to do, during that kind of Royal Rumble. For those of you listening who did not play this playthrough, the last 3 days of the month, we decided to do sort of what we called a Royal Rumble, where we would basically let everyone play all of the games again and basically improve their scores if they could. And Terry, I noticed you didn't play in the Royal Rumble. I noticed that you just kind of sat it out.
The couple games that I knew I did bad at, I didn't really think I'd get any better, so I just let them go.
Yeah, and for me, I was telling Floyd, I really knew that I had some ground to make up, and I picked a few games that I felt that I could improve my score in, and just kind of stuck with those. There, were a few, I thought my Pitfall score would hold up. Kaboom! I didn't want to play that anymore. I was already irritated. I was like, oh man, I am not playing any more Kaboom. I'm hoping that score holds up. Spider Fighter's like, no. Terry's score was just so far out of reach. I didn't want to touch that. Sequest, I had a little bit of a lead. I was hoping Terry maybe wouldn't play. He didn't improve his score in Sequest. I'm just kind of banking on that. Stampede, I think I moved up the ranks 1 or 2 places in that, and Keystone Capers. And I believe I tried Enduro but could not do it, and that's sort of how I made up my places. And I was just begging and hoping. I was like, well, this is enough to tie Terry, so I'm either hoping that Terry doesn't play anymore, or I'm hoping that some of the other guys play and actually surpass Terry's score on games where I'm already ahead of Terry, and maybe fall somewhere in the middle. So I was hoping for other people to kind of bail me out a little bit, but it just didn't happen. So you and I ended up tying, right?
Yeah.
I think we scored, I believe it was 75 points apiece with our score. So, instead of sharing the title, which I guess we could have done, that would have been a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I think that would have been nice. But I contacted Terry and I said, hey man, what do you think about maybe playing one more game to just to see who could come out on top. Let's try one more game. And I asked Terry. I said, okay, Terry, let me know what you got. Let me know what Activision games you got, and we'll just kind of go from there. So So Terry sent me a picture of his games, and we looked through them and everything. And I was like, "All right, Terry, what would you like to play? What are you thinking of?" And I think you gave me a list of 3 or 4, didn't you? Do you remember what you told me?
Pitfall 2.
Uh-huh.
Oh gosh, I know Pressure Cooker and something.
Chopper Command.
That was a Chopper Command.
Yeah, Chopper Command. So I was like, well, we've already played Pitfall, so let's not play Pitfall 2. Just, too similar. I mean, they're different games, and Pitfall 2 is a great game, and anybody out there, if you've got an Atari, get a copy of Pitfall 2. It's a fantastic sequel. I never played Pitfall 2 as a kid. I never even knew it existed until I started collecting for the 2600. But anyway, we had chosen Chopper Command and Pressure Cooker as the 2. And so I told Terry, and Terry's like, either one of those is fine with me. And I'm like, you know what, me too. So I let my daughter flip a coin, and lo and behold, it was Pressure Cooker that we played. And I was excited about it. I like Pressure Cooker. I did an article on RFGeneration about Pressure Cooker. It's a fun game, neat. I would say it's probably one of the more unique games on the system. If I had to say so, it's got a lot of action. Surprisingly, for a restaurant-themed game, right? But yeah. Terry crushed me. It wasn't even close. I think I scored like 20-something thousand, and then I was like, oh well, I hope this score holds up. And I wake up the next morning, and it's like Terry with like 120-something thousand. I think the badge was at 45,000 or something like that. I was like, oh my gosh. So Terry, I gotta know. You gotta tell me, how'd you do it?
I was looking up and down a lot. Because trying to remember the 4 different things or 3 different things they ordered, I couldn't do it. So it was a lot of back and forth and trying to keep it all straight.
I could never, for some reason, I couldn't wrap my brain around like looking down and looking at the menu of looking at the order, right? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't look at that and then decide what was actually supposed to go on each order quick enough. My brain just would not process it quick enough. And I don't know if it was, if I'm used to, looking from left to right instead of like up and down and determining, what is supposed to be on that order. I don't know what it was, but for some reason it was the most frustrating thing to me. I just could not figure it out. I would put something on a sandwich, like whatever came out first, I would put it on the sandwich, and I would just be like, well, let me see if I can figure out what else has this, item on it, or, what other sandwich includes this item. Because a lot of times you would have, you would have a few, like the burgers that would need lettuce or something like that. But, you would have an order of, it's 3 at a time, right? Yeah. There's always 3 orders at a time. And so, you're trying to keep up with that. If you've got one with lettuce, you got to say, well, what else can go on this? It could be, onion or, cheese or, whatever, the condiment happened to be in the order. And then you had to run them down the conveyor belts or had to put the orders up while the conveyor belt was continually moving, right? And you had to put it in the right slot because if you didn't, you would lose points in that too. Yeah. And it's a very chaotic game, but one of those games I would say for the Atari 2600 that I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I think the best strategy I got was after playing it for the first 4 hours was I'd try to remember the one with the most ingredients first, and that way I could knock that one out, and then it was easier to work on the one with the less ingredients afterwards.
Okay.
I think that was probably the best thing I got going.
Oh, right. Well, that's good. I mean, I really enjoy hearing other people's strategies on how they play these games, and with the score you put up, I mean, hands down, I mean, congratulations. I mean, you completely deserved the Activision Atari 2600 Activision King title for the month. So we, from all the guys at the playthrough, I just want to say, thanks a lot for playing. do have something that will be coming to you in the mail. And Floyd, you can attest to this, correct? You've seen pictures of what I've been working on.
I have seen proof. There is something very special coming your way.
Right. Let's just say that it's. I'll say it's handcrafted. So it's very special. So I will be getting your address, and I will be sending you something nice in the mail. That it might be a few more weeks. I'm working on it right now, but you will have something sent your way. So before we close out, and I'm gonna let Floyd, if you have any other questions that you would like to ask him, I'm gonna let you kind of fire away. If you have anything you'd like to ask Terry while he's on.
Yeah, because a lot of these titles seem to just run on the theme, or at least run on the mechanic of like frantic, fast-paced gameplay. So Terry, do you just have a knack for these kind of games? Or did you like grow up with this, so you're more accustomed to it?
Yeah.
I mean,
basically, yeah. When Atari came out, I was 7, 8. So I played a lot of this stuff when I was younger, and I don't know. I've just grown up with it, so that may be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It might be the fact
like,
I didn't use an Atari joystick. I used one of the aftermarket ones with. It seemed to work better.
Okay. I'm curious, which one did you use?
Oh, God. I can't remember the name of it.
Can you describe it, maybe? Maybe I can figure out what it is?
It was black. Well, they're all black. What am I saying? They're all black. God, I thought I had one right here. I don't know. It didn't use the push-button contacts. It used electricity. It contacted with electricity. Oh, but I can't remember what it's called.
All right. I actually use an aftermarket as well. And I use the Epix EPYX 500XJ. It's sort of it really fits nice in your palm. It has a very ergonomic design. It reminds me of a computer mouse, and it's got like a little side clicker on it. So that your fingers can side click instead of tapping on the top, so you're not using your thumb. And it's got a very small but responsive stick on it, and that was my controller of choice. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about that. Did you figure out what it was yet?
No. When I first started playing, I tried to use a Wicco baseball bat, and that was terrible.
Yeah. Those controllers are nice in theory, but they're not great controllers. Well, I'll tell you what, Terry. What we'll do is, when you figure out what you've got or what you use, just shoot me a private message, and what we'll do is we'll put it in the show notes so that everybody knows what you used, and we can all be searching eBay for the magic stick that will help us win Activision championships.
All right. It's just gone.
Floyd, is there anything else that you wanted to ask him about while I had him on?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
Congratulations on becoming the Atari Activision King. No, you certainly have a phenomenal skill. Something that once I finally do get my hands on an Atari and some of these games, you'll probably hear from me looking for tips and tricks.
All right.
Yeah, I saw a shirt the other day online. It said it had an Atari joystick on it. Said "one button to rule them all," and I thought that's a pretty cool shirt. I'm gonna have to get that one.
This is very appropriate.
But there is something very nostalgic and great about playing a game where you only have one button, and I think that for a lot of people who didn't grow up with the Atari or didn't have the Atari, I think that for some of the younger generation, it gets written off quite a bit because it only has one button, and maybe they think, well, this possibly can't be that great. Terry, I remember you telling me someone in your family, you had gotten them playing the Atari. Is that right?
Yeah, one of my daughter's boyfriends, he was watching me for a while playing the Activision Challenge, and I got him a flashback system to give it a shot for him.
That's awesome. Is he playing it a lot? I mean, how is he? How would you rate his skills?
He's pretty terrible.
Okay. Well, hopefully he won't listen to this.
No, he's definitely more of a modern gamer than anything.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I think like Floyd, someone like you would, if you got yourself a system and you started playing it, I think you would really enjoy the challenge of these games. They're a lot harder than a lot of people probably think they would be. Only having that one button, but at the same time, a lot of these games don't have endings. You're playing for score, and one of the greatest aspects, and Terry, you can probably speak to this too, about the Atari system and growing up playing it, was I always felt like I was over at someone else's house when I was playing the Atari. It was a very communal system.
Yeah, I can remember plenty of times in high school, you'd just go to a friend's house and play. When Pac-Man first came out, you were going everywhere playing that.
Yeah, and the carts were so small, you could just pack them in a bag real quick, in a book bag or something, just run over to someone's house. And basically, during that time, this was basically all anyone had. I mean, I didn't know anyone who had an Intellivision. I knew one of my dad's coworkers had a Coleco that I played every once in a while. I enjoyed that, but everybody, it seemed, had an Atari 2600, right?
Oh yeah.
And it was just, they had just flooded the market, especially like in the early 80s, right before the crash. It just seems like that, you could pick those up really cheap, at Swap Meet, flea markets, things like that. You could pick one up fairly cheap, and it seems like they were in almost everyone's house, and especially the games were cheap then. And some of them to this day are pretty cheap as well. So, yeah, it was nice. It was nice kind of going back, kicking around some of that nostalgia, putting my hands on that joystick again and just, kind of reliving those times. And what's so great about the community playthrough and what I enjoyed, it was like being in my friend's living room again, competing and playing against other people on these games. And so, I really appreciate all of you guys, all the guys who actually participated this month. It was a lot of fun for me, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to say that hopefully down the road, maybe we can do another challenge, maybe iMagic challenge. So I don't know how many of those cards you have, but that's a pretty good series as well. But before I let you go, Terry, I just wanted to kind of maybe get your thoughts. One last thing. I know we mentioned a few other Activision titles, but are there any Activision titles that you might recommend to maybe the person who's wanting to get into Atari collecting? What would you say some of the big titles to shoot for, other than the ones we played in April, would be?
I played a lot of Hero.
Mm-hmm.
That one was fairly decent.
Yeah, for a lot of people, I think that's their favorite Activision game. They like it the most. It's sort of a kind of a pitfall. Kind of has a pitfall. You're searching for trapped people in caves, right? Trapped people in caves.
Yeah, it's kind of an
obstacle game.
Yeah,
sort of like Pitfall.
Advanced Pitfall.
Yeah, very advanced Pitfall game.
And I have
what else?
I have a lot of memories of playing Dragster. I mean, it was a terrible game, but that was one we used to sit around and play a lot too.
I still haven't figured Dragster out, man.
It's a lot of timing and a lot of grinding noise.
Yeah. I think we mentioned River Raid. Any other games that you can think of for the Activision that you really like?
Well, I like Space Shuttle, but wow, that's a whole different kind of game.
Yeah. Crackpots, I thought was a pretty good game. I like that one. That's kind of it reminds me a lot of Kaboom, except that you're at the top and you're dropping potted plants on spiders as they try to crawl up the walls. So I thought that was a great Activision title. A lot of people, and one that I almost picked for this month was Barnstorming.
Oh, no.
But again, a very aggravating game. Fishing Derby, I think, is a pretty decent title for the 2600. And then one of my favorites, and just for nostalgic purposes, was Grand Prix. I love that game. I have a special connection. My grandmother used to play that game with me and my cousin. So I just have great memories of that, and her screaming every time she would wreck, because it sounds like someone being electrocuted every time you wreck your car. So just a fun and neat game. So anyway, guys, we hope that you will, after you listen to this podcast, you will come onto the forums, talk a little bit about the games, talk about the month of Activision play, and then also let us know what some of your favorite Activision games are. Terry, again, thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on with us and talking a little bit about the month and the games and your strategies. And on behalf of everyone at RFGeneration, the playthroughs, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Alright, so this month on the Modern Playthrough, we played a Nintendo DS game called Magical Starsign. I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Shawn, who was our leader for the month, and let him tell you a little bit about this game.
Yeah, so I just want to throw out there that one of my favorite genres in video games is like the cuter RPGs that are maybe, designed for a more casual audience or maybe for a younger audience. I really like the Atelier games on PS3. One of my favorite games of all time is a game called Rhapsody, a musical adventure for PS1. And when I saw Magical Starsign, I thought that it had that same aesthetic as those kind of games. So I was really excited to play it. And when I brought it to the community playthrough group, we all thought it looked like a cool game to play. So Magical Starsign is actually the sequel to a game called Magical Vacation, which was a Japan-only Game Boy Advance game. It was developed by Brownie Brown, which is a studio that is owned by Nintendo. They're now called 1UP Studios, and they have done some of the Mana games on the Game Boy Advance, and they also did a little bit of work on Super Mario 3D Land, amongst other things. But the game came out in 2006 in the United States, and like I said, it's an RPG that goes. It uses primarily touch controls. You can play the entire game using only the touch screen, which at first I thought was a really cool idea, but as I played the game, I didn't like it that much, and we can get into that as we discuss the game. But my initial impressions of the game was that it was very nice and colorful, and at first I was really getting a lot of the things that I wanted to get out of that cute RPG genre feeling type game, like. The script was really funny. The characters were very colorful and cute. The battle system was kind of simple and easy to master. But as I went through the game, I wasn't exactly getting sucked in by it. And when I was about halfway through the game, I had a couple things happen in my personal life that prevented me from really being able to finish the game. So it was at that point that I handed the playthrough over to Rich, who you guys know as Singlebanana, and he was already rolling through the game, so he's going to have a very different perspective on it than I am, and he actually finished the game and liked it a lot. So what I liked about my time with the game, and I did get about 15 hours into it. It's not like I just tried it and then put it down. But what I liked about that game again is like the cute aesthetic. The battle system was easy to master. What I didn't like was after a while, only using the touch screen made me not feel like I was playing a video game, but more like some kind of like educational or like an iPad game or an iPhone game. I know you don't use a stylus for those devices, but that's kind of what it made me feel like. And so the other thing I didn't love about the game was the music, and I found that it was hard to play this game for prolonged periods of time with headphones on because the music started to get annoying to me. And I actually find this with a lot of DS games that I play, so I don't know if I actually just I have a personal preference against the DS sound chip, which is totally possible. But I didn't like the music in this game, so there was a couple of things that were preventing me from just having like long playthroughs of this game. But I did like in the battle system, there's a timing element that's very reminiscent to Super Mario RPG, which you can you time your touchscreen presses to make your attacks more powerful or to defend yourself a little bit better. The only thing I didn't like about that was that it wasn't that the game didn't give you enough feedback to say whether you were doing it right or not. Like when you did an attack and you did the timing right, the screen would just flash white, and the icon changed. And Rich, you were talking on the forum about that a little bit. I think you probably mastered that system a little bit better than some other people did. So
I got it down pat a little bit, but I don't think I quite mastered that system. But yeah, that's definitely something we'll kind of touch on. Sure. I mean, I think you're bringing up some just great points about the game, and things that I liked about the game as well, and definitely things that I disliked about the game as well. You mentioned that, and I think we'll hit on all those points. I want to say first of all that I really appreciate Shawn actually sent me a DS. I want to tell this story first of all because he told me he had a DS for sale and that he'd picked it up at a really good price and he had gotten a new one. I think, Shawn, did you say that you got the one with the larger screen? Is that correct?
Yeah, I bought a DSi XL, and it has the bigger screens, so I really didn't need the DS Lite anymore.
But what's great about this is the DS Lite he sent me was a pearl pink colored DS Lite. So
oh yeah,
very macho, very macho.
So my first experience with the Nintendo DS was on a pink DS, which I played, and it was a great experience. And that's I'm kind of coming from not only this is kind of one of the first more modern RPGs that I've played. I've played a lot of old ones, but this is actually my first interaction with this handheld console. So I'm going to have probably a little different perspective than what you do as well. But I want to thank you for sending me that and sell it to me for a great price. Luckily, I was able to pass that along to my daughter and found a cobalt blue one at a great price. So
oh, cool.
recently, so she's going to have a lot of fun with that, and I've already picked her up quite a few games.
Nice.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier was that this one was based on a Magical Vacation, which was, you said that was the original Japanese that it was based on. The current Magical Starsign that we're playing, it sort of starts out in a like a school academy.
Right.
That's where it opens up, the plot opens up in that sort of setting. Do you know anything about the original or anything about the plot of the original that maybe kind of takes us into this second one?
I don't, but I'm actually looking at the Wikipedia for it right now.
Okay.
And actually the screenshots, like the battle system looks very similar, and I can see a lot of the same characters.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like you're traveling. The Will-O-Wisp Academy is involved, and you're taking vacations to different areas. It sounds like very similar to the plot of this game, which we can explain right now.
Yeah. The plot of this one is sort of you're at a magic academy, and you and your schoolmates you get to actually choose a character from the beginning and name your character. So a hero or heroine at the beginning, and you're at this magical academy, and all of a sudden your professor or your teacher, she disappears, and so you're going on this mission, traveling from planet to planet to rescue and find her. And there's certainly an additional backstory to that. Sort of a world domination story, and the teacher is a powerful magician who's gone to stop this other, I guess, powerful magician who is trying to take over the galaxy and destroy the galaxy. So I guess that's sort of the plot point, and unless you have anything to add to that, Shawn.
No, that's about as far as I got. I mean, in the beginning, you and your classmates all get into rockets, and you get scattered throughout the solar system. So one of the initial plot points is that you have to go gather up your classmates at the different planets.
Right.
So
just your average day at school.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's sort of, the game's sort of broken up into 3 parts. It's you're in the academy, everyone goes off on different rockets, you're collecting your group. I would say like the collection of the other 5 characters is probably the first part of the game. There's a second part of the game where you're trying to find these things called gummies, which is these strange magical items made of basically gummy material. And that's sort of the second part of the game, is you're trying to collect the different elemental gummies. And there's 5 of those as well. And then the third part of the game would be, traveling to the dark planet, the sun planet, sort of the light planet, and the dark planet, which is sort of encapsulates sort of the end of the game. But I had in my notes, do you guys remember the show, what was it called? Oh my gosh, was it called like Heroes or something like that? They had like the cheerleader, and remember that show that was on TV?
Yeah. I know of it, but I never actually watched it myself.
Yeah, I never watched it either, but I just remember the tagline was like, save the cheerleader, save the world. I have save the teacher, save the world here, in my notes, which I thought was pretty funny. It just kind of popped in my head when I was thinking about the game. But we were talking, Shawn, you were talking a little about the kind of cuteness of the RPG, and I think that was, we warned people before they played that this was sort of a cute RPG, and what did you think? What was your take on it? Was it too cute, or was it just enough? Or
well, you know what? Like I said in the intro, my tastes are very skewed towards this style. So it really, I like girly anime type RPGs. I like cute RPGs. I like them, easy, and so for me, it's hard to say like, oh, it was too cute, or I would even say it wasn't cute enough. But I actually think like it had more of a classic aesthetic to me than anything else. Like, yeah, there were some cutesy characters. Like Lassie was a really kind of cutesy, funny character.
Right.
But tell me, Maka, the robot character, wasn't a carbon copy of Robo from Chrono Trigger.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
A lot of the characters were kind of tributes or throwbacks to classic RPG characters.
Yeah, I thought Pico was sort of a throwback to Chrono from Chrono Trigger as well, the spiky red hair,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
how about you, Floyd? What did you think about it? Was it a little too cute, or how did you feel about it through the game as you played?
At first, the cuteness was a little bit too much, but the more I played the game, I got used to it. I think what I got a kick out of the like almost everybody's name was some sort of food pun.
Right.
Like you meet some characters called Brioche and like Camembert. But my general impressions of the game were that it was good. It was fun, like really lighthearted, really casual. It's hard to say if it was too cute, because it kind of was.
Right.
But
okay.
Once you set that aside, it's a fun little experience.
Right. I thought from the beginning, and I think Disposed Hero, one of our participants, said it best. He says, I'm liking the game a lot so far. When I first started playing it, I was a little put off by the game's cutesy presentation, but it quickly grew on me, and now I would say that it gives the game a unique charm. I think sort of what he's referring to is something I kind of brought up on the forums, was that I think that the cutesiness is very heavy at the beginning, but I think as you progress through the game, you still get the kind of...
It gets more serious.
Right, and that kind of falls off a bit, though you still have like the names of characters, or NPCs or enemies. You'll still have those sort of cute names and things like that, and the towns will have cute names, but I think that sort of wears off, and you get a little more into the plot and the feel of the story, and it's a little better. And I would say if you haven't played this game, I still think it's one that you're going to find for a really good price. I think it runs
it's very cheap for an RPG that was developed basically by Nintendo.
Right.
It's surprising how under the radar it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much the market value is for it, like online.
I think I found a complete copy for $10.
Yeah, $10. It seems about the
really
average.
cheap.
$5 to $10.
Okay, so maybe I overpaid a little. I was going to say I found a copy at EB Games. There's 2 of them there for about $17.
Oh, okay.
I thought that seemed okay, but maybe
You
it's
didn't
too much.
drastically overpay.
Nah.
No, nothing too bad.
No, I recommend people at least give it a try.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one, like we said, like with early DS games, PSP games, I think those type of games are really, it's a good time to buy, right? Xbox, it's, these games aren't really shooting up in value. They've kind of dropped because they're sort of in between. They're not the very classic systems, and they're not the brand new systems, so they're in a really good place to buy them now. So if you come across a copy, I would definitely recommend picking it up, putting it in your collection, and just picking it up when you get time to play it. So
Yep.
and
I was going to say, because my only experience with the game is maybe 10 minutes at most, because I bought a copy, I tested it, and for me, on the cuteness aspect that you guys were talking about, it was a little too much. Like, I'm not a fan of anime to begin with, and there are a lot of anime-based games that I can kind of look past it and just go for the gameplay, because usually video games, I don't know, to me it feels like they aren't so focused on the anime elements, and it's toned down a bit compared to TV shows and comic books and stuff. But this one just was, it just had so many cliche styles, and I don't know, it was a big turn off for me.
Yeah. I think
and
when
something I just couldn't look past.
Yeah, it's definitely a fair criticism, but if you're not into that type of stuff, I can definitely see like how that would make you not want to play any more of the game. Because you get hit really heavy with it at first. But I think if you stayed with it another 20 minutes and, made it to the rockets, got to the first planet and started playing it, I think the plot develops a little more, and I think you'll actually enjoy the game a little more, and you'll be playing.
Yeah, I could see maybe playing it someday, but I'd really have to be in the right mindset for it.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know, just give it a little bit more effort.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people quit that game during the tutorial at the beginning. Because it was really drawn out and really simple. That, I found that to be the hardest part of the whole game. Just it tried my patience so much.
Yeah. Well, I think with newer crowds and younger people playing DS and Nintendo typically is a system. As we know, a system that's usually made for the younger generation. They've always stayed true to that. Whereas PlayStation,
I think the term is family friendly.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, I can definitely see for all these kind of games, especially ones like this where I'm not a big fan of it myself. I can say pretty accurately, I think, that it's a really great style of game for kids.
Right.
But there's some of these games that just are too young for me in my mind.
Yeah, and with what Floyd was saying about the tutorial, I think that for us, we've been playing games for a long time, and with an RPG, we don't need someone to hold our hand. We're going to figure it out. But with the system being more family friendly, such as this one, and introducing something like an RPG to possibly a younger crowd, there probably does need to be a little bit more hand holding. And I kind of took it at that. I do get annoyed with tutorials. I'm just like, really again? I mean, I've been playing these things for years, so I really don't need a whole lot of tutorial. But I think that was probably the reason, and it didn't really bother me as bad. But there were some parts of the tutorial, and I'll probably get to that later, that I didn't really have like a really good concept of. There were some parts of the game that were kind of odd, that as far as the combat system. So maybe we should move on and talk about the combat system a little bit, and that's something that Shawn had mentioned, and maybe we can kind of segue into that pretty well.
Yes.
Okay.
So in the game, in the overworld or in the towns, you can actually move your characters around with the D-pad or the face buttons. Mm-hmm. But when you're in battle, it's touchscreen only. So you have all your basic RPG commands: attack, magic, run away, or use an item. But the game implements a formation system where if you have a magic user in the back, there's 2 rows basically, and you can align your 6 characters in 2 rows of 3 or any other configuration thereof. And if you have a spellcaster in the back, that'll be a attack all cast. It'll attack all the enemies. They can kind of lob the spell over. But if you have a spellcaster in the front line, they can only attack 1 enemy. And then, if you're in the back, what was it, Rich, that they could only hit you with magic, right? Like if somebody was in the back, they couldn't get hit with a physical attack.
Yeah, they could only be hit by magic.
That's right.
Or any move that hit everyone.
Right.
So you have to work that into your strategy as far as weaker and stronger characters, and you have to figure out where you want to put them.
And contrary to that, just let me mention real quick, and I'll let you continue.
Sure.
The enemies were set up the same way. The enemies were in rows as well, so the ones in front could physically attack you, and the ones in the back would cast spells and would attack your entire party. So you had to think about that in combat as well, how those enemies were going to attack you. And
yeah, it's kind of interesting. You don't get face-to-face access to all the enemies like in most RPGs.
You're right.
Right, exactly. So that added a little element of strategy and pre-planning, because you could set up your configuration, just when you were not in battle, so you can get ready. The other thing it had, which for those of us who played Super Mario RPG for one of our earlier community playthroughs last year, it employed a similar button, actually the touchscreen timing system, which I mentioned in the opening, where you would select your attack or your spell, and right before it was about to land, you would touch the enemy with your stylus, and if you timed it right, you would get extra damage. And the same thing with if you were healing, or if you were about to be attacked, you'd tap yourself, and you would defend yourself better. But like I said in the intro, and Rich, you can touch on this now, is that I just had a hard time doing it a lot of the time, and I felt like in Super Mario RPG, you could really master it with a particular, like maybe not every character you could get every time, but I found like certain characters I had it down pat, that I was getting it every time. But in this game, it seemed pretty random, and I don't know if that was a technological limitation of using the touchscreen to do it, but I felt like it was a little more random.
I agree. I think that when I would touch the screen with my stylus, I would always wonder if indeed I was getting a reaction from that. I mean, my DS was very responsive with movement and everything, so I thought I was. The strategy that I used, and as I put it on there, when you were casting, what you would do is you would cast in this ring of your element that you were casting. Each character was associated with an element, and the symbol for that element there would be like 6 or 8 of them that would just kind of spin around you, and it would kind of grow outward, and then as it would come back in, I would tap my stylus on my character who was casting the spell, and if you could hit it at the right time, you would get a sort of a super spell, an enhanced version of that spell. And so I got it fairly down pat for most characters. The one character that I did have trouble with was Sorbet, and I don't know why that was. It was just I could really I don't know if there was a different kind of hitbox. I don't know if there were if it was influenced by items that you had, because I know that I think it was Mocha, the robot. I think he had like an item that would increase your ability to do, bigger damage, or your special spell. And so I think that maybe there was some sort of hitbox or some sort of window that you had to tap within, and I think it maybe varied for each character. Now, I can't confirm that, but that was basically what I experienced with that touchscreen.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. Now, what did you think about what I was saying on the forum thread about the boss battles? I thought they were a little too tough, if not unbalanced, but you disagree with me on that. I actually had a hard time from the first boss. The Spider Queen kicked my butt a couple times, and I was kind of like, what the hell's going on? Like, I can't even beat the first boss, but you didn't seem to have that kind of trouble, so I'm just wondering, how our experiences were so different. And I guess, not to say I didn't grind, I actually felt like I was pretty equipped for the common enemies, but when it came to bosses, I had a lot of trouble.
Right. I tend to be, when I play RPGs, I tend to be a bit of an over-healer. If I'm getting somewhat low, I'm not the kind, and again, I don't know how you play, but when I start getting low, I don't heal. I don't heal when I get really low. I start healing when I'm kind of midway down in my HP, and so maybe that's what I was doing. Also with the characters, like as far as putting them in the different rows, I think with the tendency is when you have a character, your main character, your hero or your heroine, you always think, okay, this is going to be my most balanced, my heaviest hitting character. I'm going to put this character in the front row. I kind of quickly learned that I did the heroine, I did the girl, and I put her in the back row, and I also put Lassie in the back row because those were the two primary healers in the game. And so I put them in the back row, and I think that sort of helped things out quite a bit, as I progressed through the game and through the bosses. As far as the Spider Queen was concerned, I think I had both of them in the front. I would have had them in the front row for that because that was at the beginning.
Right.
And like I said, I think for me, I'm probably just an overhealer. I probably was using a lot of healing items, to keep my HP up, and that might have been the difference in that. And it also might have been, I can't remember that fight because it's been so long ago, but the strategy of the fight, it helped me refresh my memory on that fight. Weren't there ads in that fight?
Yes.
Okay. And I think my mistake at the beginning was I was attacking the ads and taking out the ads, but what would happen is when you would finish taking them out, they would replenish again. So
yes, I believe there was like a head and the limbs or something like that.
Right.
And support calls that she would have.
Right. And so I think once I took them out the first time and then they respawned the second time, I think what I did was probably took 2 out of the 3 out and left the other one and just attacked the queen. And that was, that's how I got through that battle. It was just kind of a quick kind of reaction and learning from that battle. And again, I tend to overheal, so I think that maybe was what happened there. I only had, during the game, one problem with one of the bosses that I had to go back. It took me 3 or 4 times to beat the Holy Sapling that was in Yegg Salad. That was the name of the area. YGGSALAD, Yegg Salad.
Okay.
And
I definitely didn't get that far. So.
Yeah, and that was for I can't remember which gummy it was for, but it was for one of the gummies, and that was that fight I had to restart several times, but luckily, and one of the things I really liked about this game was that much like Phantasy Star, you could save anywhere and at any time, which was really nice, to be able to do that. Saving before battles was really nice.
Yeah, that was one of the, I'm glad you brought that up because I kind of forgot about that. That was one of the things that was a big plus for me for this game because I was playing it a lot at work. Mm-hmm. So I would only be able to play for like 15 minutes on a break or, 20 minutes on my lunch. So to be able to save any time was a real big thing for me, especially, this is a portable game, so they got to make it, easy to play on the go.
Yeah.
So.
But unlike Phantasy Star, I felt like wherever you saved at, you were never in a spot where, you couldn't say, oh, well, I'm not strong enough to beat this enemy. I'm going to need to grind more. Or, or I'm not going to be able to get out of the situation that I'm in right now. I think you were easily able to get out of where you were. And, it wasn't like you were in a dungeon or something like you were in Phantasy Star where you had to have more than one save file. I ran one save file the whole time, and I was fine. So I think they did a really nice job of making sure that participants didn't get stuck, during saves and had to, run additional save files. So that is...
Yeah, you never had to save yourself into a corner, so to speak.
Right. With the combat, something else that I wanted to bring up is this is one of those games where you're just kind of walking along, and it was basically a random encounter game. Just going to run into enemies. And Shawn, I think you and I and Floyd, you can speak to this as well. The battles seemed very tedious and long. Just the random encounters, just kind of the trash battles seemed, like it would take, like almost like a minute and a half to 2 minutes at least just to get through a simple battle.
Yes. And even after being in an area, maybe grinding for a while, where in almost any other RPG I can think of that I've played, I should be able to wipe out those common enemies very quickly.
Right.
I almost never got to that point in this game. Floyd, you got any experience with that?
I want to start off by saying that I found the random encounters to be very sparse.
The encounter rate was pretty... I thought it was fine, actually. But if you think it was low, that's a valid, valid viewpoint. I thought the encounter rate was fine.
I didn't think it was detrimentally low, but it was on the low side for sure. But I like the battles. I like turn-based RPGs, so I didn't have any problem with 1 to 2 minute random encounters.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a valid viewpoint.
Yeah. I think the encounters got a little heavier as you progress through the game, and again, I think it has something to do with that sort of idea of kind of hold your hand. There were some battles that were, as you made it through the game, that were not random encounters where you could see the enemies, run into the enemies, and then battle.
What I liked about the battles is that there would be some enemies that work together. One example I can think of is when you're in the first pirate mole cave, there were frozen enemies, and there would be one guy who can thaw them out, or over time they would thaw it or something. So, you don't remember that?
No, I don't recall that. I really don't.
Oh, okay. Maybe I don't know why you didn't experience this, but I found some enemies to work together to sort of dwindle down my hit points.
Right. I didn't notice that, but that's definitely quite possible. I did notice one thing I did note about the enemies was that typically your different planets were basically a representative of the elements, correct? Like you had like a wood planet, you had a water planet, a wind planet, a fire planet, and the majority of the enemies that were located on that planet were associated with that element.
Right.
I think the battles really opened up once you got that cosmic shift move, or whatever it was called. And you could move the planets along that star system.
Right.
So you could move your planets into their areas, which would boost your character's stats, or I would often move my enemies' planets out of their zones.
Right.
So that they were weaker.
Yeah, it was called Celestial Swap, was what it was called.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they could actually use that against you as well. They could move you out if if your alignment was so that your character was powered up. They could move that out. And I guess that's something we should probably maybe discuss, sort of bring up, is sort of describe what you're talking about, Floyd, there. Like the whole planet alignment combat system that was set up in this game.
Okay, so this game has a bit of a more involved combat system. Like we've already touched on the timed hits. But every character is affiliated with a magical star sign. And those star signs are affiliated with celestial planets that revolve around the solar system. And when a planet was in its color, like if the wood planet was in sort of that brownie zone, your wood element characters would be stronger. And it had that rock paper scissors mechanic of this element is strong against that element,
Right.
but weak against this element. So you really had to think about who you always had your 6 party members, but you always had to think about who was attacking who when you were fighting.
Yeah, and when you would touch with your stylus, when you would get ready to fire a spell, you would see the element of the enemy's sort of the sign for the magical star sign of the enemy sort of floating around the enemy, so you'd have a better idea of who you needed to attack and who you would do the most damage or the least amount of damage to, right?
Right, yeah. So if you, for example, picked Lassie and wanted to do her magical move, all the enemies' star signs would light up above their head so you can target a specific enemy, which it really helped when you were fighting with magic.
Yeah, and one thing I liked about the game is that it had a little thing you could tap with your stylus that would automatically, anywhere you were during battle, would bring up the chart to show you, which was, because for me, I always know that, like, okay, water's going to put out fire, right? I know that, that's common in games like Final Fantasy. It goes back a long time. But, when you get into things like, of course, fire's going to be, strong against wood, but when you go from like wood to like earth and wind, those things get a little tricky sometimes, and I found myself not being able to remember those. So I was really happy that they had that little option that you could click on, and you could really tell what you needed to use.
Yeah, I referenced that diagram quite a bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
and there was
It's almost like Pokemon with the extensive complexities of the different elements.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. That's a good comparison.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they kind of brought in, small pieces of different types of games into this one game, and was something I really enjoyed. But there was also another dynamic. There was a night and day dynamic too, right?
Well, yeah, because your hero or heroine character would be affiliated with night or day.
Right. Dark or
And so
light, yes.
Dark or light. And during the daytime, if your character was a light character, he or she would be imbued with more power and would be weaker at night, and vice versa if they were a dark element.
Okay. So, I guess my question is, how did you guys who played the game, how did you feel about this? Did it work well? Was it too complex? Was it a little much? I myself, I thought there was a lot going on, and a lot of times I had trouble kind of figuring it out, but once it took me a while to sort of learn the planet alignment system, and I was mentioning earlier, we were talking about the tutorial. I did not think the tutorial did an outstanding job of explaining it. It did do a slight job of explaining it, but I was still very confused about the whole planet alignment issue and how that worked in the game. And it took me a little while. It was probably midway through the game before I really kind of figured that portion of it out.
So did you memorize the planet alignments?
No, huh?
Like the strengths and weaknesses?
The strengths and weaknesses, no. I never felt like I had to memorize that as far as the elements were concerned, because I always had the chart. I could always reference that if I needed to, which I really liked about the game. But with the planet alignments, I guess I was a little thrown off by that and how that actually worked, and where that zone was. I think it was probably until I got Celestial Swap that I really started to understand it a lot more. Because I had to interact with it a little more.
Yeah, that's a good point, because sometimes before you get Celestial Swap, you'd see one of your characters or an enemy character glowing, and it didn't really explain why. So that threw me off too, so that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shawn, how did you feel about it?
I kind of thought it was just one of those things that was happening as a layer over what I was doing, and I honestly just kind of let it happen, didn't pay too much attention to it. I felt like the contextual, like the icons and your character glowing, like I knew either something good was happening or don't don't attack this enemy because you won't do damage, or do attack this enemy because you'll do more damage in your element. So I couldn't explain the system to you very well, but I felt like contextually within the game, they didn't, like you guys are saying, they didn't do a beautiful job of explaining how and why and when everything was happening, but I just kind of went with it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, you spent roughly 20 odd hours with the game, so you would eventually learn the mechanics of it.
Right. Exactly. I guess my issue was I kind of wish I wouldn't have. I'm not sure at what point you got Celestial Swap, but I want to say it was 10 to 15 hours into the game, maybe, because it wasn't immediate. It took a while to get that. I just kind of felt like it shouldn't have taken me that long to kind of, understand the game. But at the same time, the difficulty of the game from the beginning wasn't exceedingly difficult, so I didn't really have a lot of problems in the beginning. So once the learning curve kind of caught up, I was fine. I didn't struggle with the game. So, there's that as well. One thing that I was a little concerned about, and I guess you guys could talk about this, was the ratio of physical attacks to magical attacks. I felt like, with the way your magic points sort of regenerated on their own, I felt like I never really had a problem of really running out of magic, and so I didn't use physical attacks a lot. Yeah. It's sort of the opposite.
You were encouraged to fight with magic, weren't you?
Yeah, you were. I think there was even an NPC that mentioned something about don't be afraid to use your magic often, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I think the game is kind of set up that way, and why not? Like I don't have any. I use physical attacks here and there, and I did find like Lassie's heal all used 100% of her mana, or whatever you want to call it,
right?
Magic points. So that was something you had to account for. But then you have the what was it, sap, that gave you back your magic points. I forget what the item was, but yeah, I found that if I was using the low level magic attacks, you'd never run out. But if you wanted to, use one of your major attacks, it could use more than half of your magic points. So you could only use it maybe once or twice during battle, unless you had somebody use an item to replenish those magic points. But you are totally right that they just the MP regenerates pretty readily in this game, and you usually don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and especially with someone like Lassie, I think hers regenerates quicker than anyone, and she was such a weak attacker that you could skip around and not cast, and her magic would regenerate. And
yep, I would do that.
Yeah, and so what would happen was, when you would cast that heal spell, it would take up all of your mana, but the lower amount of mana that you had left, the weaker the heal would be. So
yeah, I like that concept.
Yeah, it was a nice little mechanic. So, but you really had to kind of contemplate. My gosh, I'm going to use up all of my mana casting this one spell, and I think that your hero or heroine had a heal spell as well, and it was 50%, correct? Of the magic.
So.
Yes, yeah, that was something I got towards right at the end when I started. See, now I didn't use the main heroine as a healer because I actually didn't have that heal spell till right about when I stopped playing. So I had a little bit of a different strategy than you, but yeah, I believe it was 50%.
Well, I think your strategy was similar to mine. I think that but as you progress through the game and your party grows to 6. I think you have to end up moving your heroine sort of is up at the front at the beginning because he or she is a very strong attacker. But what you end up having to do is you have to move to the back row because she takes on more of a healing role in the game, I think.
Okay.
And then I think the other character I used at the back was Sorbet because Sorbet had a lot of sort of enhancement spells that she could use over the entire party. And so that tended to be my typical second row. So
okay.
But Floyd, did you have any comments about the magic? Did you think overuse or? just
no,
right?
No, I didn't think it was overused at all.
Okay.
I thought it was really well done. And you're right in saying that your main hero or heroine would be a heavy hitter at first. Mm-hmm. And as your party was totally assembled, he or she would become more of a, heal when necessary or fight when necessary type character.
Right. And his or her spells were powerful enough where you could attack from the back row and still do, since you were attacking from the back row, you would attack multiple enemies and still do a fair amount of damage from that back row, which was nice as well.
I would often get frustrated with Mocha, though, because he would almost always run out of mana.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, he starts with such a low total amount.
Yeah.
It uses it all up like pretty quickly.
His magic moves were pretty strong, but they would take a lot of his mana, and he regenerates it so slowly.
Yeah. His attacks weren't, his physical attacks weren't bad either. He didn't have a lot of mana. His physical attacks were fairly strong, where you could use those. He was kind of your front center guy, right? He was your guy that's going to take your damage. I mean, he definitely had the most hit points out of any character in that game. I mean, by far. And we talked about it in Phantasy Star with the different roles of the characters, and I definitely thought that Mocha tended to be that sort of tank, right?
Yeah, he was definitely a damage sponge.
Yeah, for sure.
With a name like Mocha, maybe it's supposed to be like your caffeine intake almost. Mochaccino, like hard hitting for a short time and then dies off.
Caffeine buzz over.
Yeah, exactly.
Great point.
There you go.
And so something else I think Shawn mentioned that was really important in this game was sort of the stylus interface, and we've already talked about how that worked with casting and actually physical damage too, with tapping the stylus and creating more damage. This being the first game, as I mentioned, I had played on the DS, I really did not comprehend that I was not using the D-pad at all in this game. And
you mean you weren't cognizant of it? Is that what you're saying?
Right, okay. Because I thought, well, this is just natural. This is the way this system's set up. It's got the stylus. I'm just supposed to use this all the time, right? So, for me playing it, I'm having a different experience than you guys who've played with the DS before. And so one of the things that was aggravating to me with the stylus and the moving around was pretty fluid. I liked that. But as I was trying to talk to NPCs, if they were like really close together, or party members, if we were kind of broken off and all close together, I would just keep tapping on the wrong people all the time and just get so infuriated at having to, watch the same conversations over and over again. And so
that happened to me too quite a few times. Mm-hmm. I think I brought this up in the forums too, is that I would have no issue whatsoever with the touch implementation if this was an iPad game. Mm-hmm. But I find that an iPad is very comfortable in the hand, and that's what it's designed for. Whereas on a DS, even though you have that touch screen, it's not really ergonomically designed for long play sessions using it. So I find that after a while I'd have to put the DS on a table and just sort of have it standing like a laptop and just use my stylus to touch the lower screen that way.
Interesting.
That's just my take.
And so
my 2 cents.
So I think we all, when we all played the game, we all went with light magic, correct? Not dark magic. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that Disposed actually went dark magic on this game, and I think the only difference, he said that he feels like he pretty much got the same experience. He says as far as he can tell, it didn't really change, and the whole choice seems to be pretty superficial, though I thought from the tutorial at the beginning it said that darker magic was sort of a tougher road. It seemed like instead of healing, what you were doing was you were basically stealing, as you were stealing health as opposed to just healing your party.
Yeah, that's what was implied earlier on, but Disposed said that it didn't seem any more difficult
Right.
when he compared his experience to ours.
That's right. So it would be interesting to hear what he has to say about that. I think that I think he beat the game. I think he ended up finishing the game very recently, like within the last week. So
Yeah.
I'll be curious, and I know he's listening to this, and I'll be curious for him to maybe talk a little on the forums about sort of the differences in light and dark magic, and that's one of the things that I wish we would have probably spoken about, maybe planned out before we started playing the game, where one of us could, maybe go the other route and see where we ended up on that. But just wanted to kind of bring that up. I don't really have a lot to say about it, but, just wanted our listeners to, realize that there is that option, and, just kind of curious as where he stands with it and how he felt, at the end, if it was, tougher for him to get through. But the other thing we could move on to and talk about a little bit are the weapons and items. I just kind of want to know what you guys thought about the variety of weapons and items in the game, and was it clear, sort of as far as the weapons and items were concerned that you could put on? Was it really clear what was better than overall when you compared the items?
I found the items and equipment to be standard RPG fare, and I did find that in the menu system that it gave you the typical, like, this is an upgrade, like the number was green or something instead of, you know what I mean? Like it would show you that you were upgrading. Right. The only thing the major complaint I have about the item system is that the items all have cute names like green frog and yellow sap and all this stuff, and I don't know what they are. And if you're in the menu system outside of a battle, it will give you a description of what it is and what it does. If you're in battle and you pull up your item menu, you basically have to remember what it does.
Oh, okay.
You could actually get a description of every item in battle if you touch the little question mark in the corner.
Huh.
Well,
that would pull up a little like dictionary of all the items you have.
See, now I wish I'd have complained about it on the forum thread, and you probably could have jumped in and helped me with that. But okay, I actually didn't know that, so then my complaint is invalid for that. So yeah, the item system was just fine, Rich. No complaints.
I'll say this: other than healing items, I didn't use items. Any sort of like battle. Combat items.
Confuse the enemy or freeze the enemy or anything like that. You didn't do. Yeah, me neither.
I
didn't do any of that either.
And for me, it almost seemed like a waste, to have these.
But
things.
I don't do that. Do you find that a lot of RPGs have that kind of stuff and you don't use them? Because like I'm playing Persona 4 right now, and they got the same kind of stuff in there, and I never use that. Like. Yeah. If anything, I might have a spell that might, cast confusion or, curse or something, but I almost never use those kind of items in any game, so it didn't really surprise me that I
that's a good point
here.
That's a great point. Those things are just sort of like, sometimes items just seem like filler, like, just fun toys to play with, and I think you even got a few items on Parasite Eve that were the same way.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing, actually.
Yeah, and so, it is kind of toys, just kind of filler, just something, hey, if you want to try this out and confuse some enemies, during this battle, hey, use it. But, I find myself a lot of times, kind of hoarding those sort of items just because, well, am I going to need this later in the game? I don't know. Should I use it now? Is this something I'm really going to need? So, I typically never use those items, except for... Of course, the healing items I use quite often, especially after battle, just to heal my party up more. Right. As far as the gear's concerned, and maybe this is me, like, further into the game, but a lot of times further into the game, you could compare items and see if it was an upgrade or not, but where you might upgrade in one area, such as intelligence, you might go down in another area, such as defense, when you would get a new item. So you would always have to make that choice. And for me, I guess I really couldn't figure it out because, like I said, like I think all the characters had different attributes, and I think that certain things were better for certain characters. Like Lassie, for instance, probably being on the back row probably didn't need a lot of defense. But the intelligence going up would probably help with the magic, probably help with bigger heals and things of that nature. So I feel like you really had to know a little bit more about the characters and the characters' roles, and it seemed like there were a lot of different what's the word I'm trying to say? Attributes that there's a whole assortment of attributes that you would have to know, okay, well, what is this going to do to my character? And, I couldn't figure that out. I felt like a lot of the times with the upgrades or with the weapons, I felt like I was just guessing. It was like, well, this one's like making this go up 2 points or making this go up 4 points and making this only go down 2 points. So maybe this is an upgrade. I don't know. So
kind of things dealing with the same.
So things actually went down too at the same time as going up for certain upgrades.
Right, and
like not every weapon just gave you +3 on everything. You had to kind of, like Rich was saying, to make a choice. Are you willing to sacrifice, some luck for a little bit extra strength or whatever the attributes were. So
and I don't mind that. I mean, I've seen that in other games. I don't mind that, but I feel like with other games, I have more of a knowledge base of my characters and can really understand what makes them better in battle, and better for me. And so, usually when you get new items and stuff, your new items are always going to be better than your old items. That's sort of an RPG trope a lot of times, and there's no second guessing. But I really felt with this game I was doing a lot of second guessing, and I felt like, there could have been a little more clarity with those things.
All right, so just to wrap up the conversation, Rich, I wanted to thank you because when I kind of I had to put the game down, and it really was an easy transition for you to kind of take over the playthrough for me that I was hosting. So I just wanted to thank you for that. We didn't have to make a big deal out of it. We didn't even say anything. You were able to just, because you were ahead in the game and because you were there, you were able to just kind of commandeer the playthrough. And you did a really good job, and I just wanted to say I appreciate that. So
Thanks.
being that you are the only one of us that finished the game, I wonder if you could just comment to kind of wrap things up on the more major themes in the game.
Well, one of the things, and another kind of one of the issues that I had with this game was it was very jumpy. There was sort of the main plot story of you go save the teacher, and it becomes about something a lot more than that. There becomes this world crisis between humans and robots, and how the robots feed off of the gummies, and how these are kind of becoming in short supply, but that there's a way that the more human characters are changing into gummies, and then the robots are going to end up attacking the humans. There's the whole idea of the space police plot, where the space police are, some of them have gone bad, and you're fighting against authority and against the space police, but some of them are still good, and some of them are helping you out, and you kind of end up turning the tides and getting the space police back on your side. So there's a lot going on as far as theme-wise, and I really just thought with this game that it didn't work for me. There was too much going on. So much was unbelievable. So many, kind of odd twists and turns. It just wasn't, if that makes sense, it wasn't very cohesive. I kind of just wanted, I would have been fine with, okay, I'm saving the princess, the quote princess, the teacher, and I'm good with that. That's a good enough plot for me. Or I'm saving the world, but it just got really garbled along the way, and there were just so many strange things that were going on. It was very odd and confusing, and by the end of it, I'm fighting this giant worm inside of this dark planet that for somehow there's some transport between a light planet and a dark planet, and I'm fighting a worm. underground that's, you know, eating gummies and inside of a cave that turns people into gummies. And it was just bizarre. I felt like I was watching Videodrome or something like that, you know. I'm sure some of you seen that film. So it was just bizarre, and you know, kind of my thoughts.
Say, I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you say, like, even after having finished the game, that there were just too many loose ends, or did things start to come together, like as the credits rolled or whatever?
I think that you do get a conclusion. I think that you realize, yes, you've saved the world. Yes, you've averted the robot zombie plague, right? It's going to take over, and they're going to start attacking humans.
But you're saying as it was happening, you didn't really know what was going on too clearly. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, and it was all kind of like packaged up in a little bow at the end, and it wasn't... I guess what I'm saying, it was so confusing that, like, the way it got packaged at the end was like, okay, well, it's all over now. You know, just kind of quickly all over, and just so many confusing things going on. There was one specific plot hole that I just wanted to mention. There was this, and I think you guys probably, you know, as you were playing through it, did you guys come across the Book of the Darned?
Yes.
I did, yeah.
Okay. So this was a very, like, big plot element, this whole Book of the Darned, and how your teacher had read this book, and how this book is sort of this mind-altering, life-changing thing, and how her student, I think it was Kale was his name, the enemy in the game, had read this book as well, and it had turned him evil. Well, there's a point in the game, and I don't know that you guys got to it, there's a point where Sorbet goes in late at night and starts reading from this book. And there's this whole, like, sort of cutscene. There's this whole cutscene where she's reading through this book, and you're kind of like, oh, you know, something's going to happen. She's going to turn on you. Something's going to happen, and you're waiting for that to happen, right? And nothing. There's nothing. Nothing's explained.
Wow.
It's just a huge loose plot hole in this game, and I have no idea why they chose to do that. I mean, she starts having some. I've seen some explanation of this from other people, like where she starts having some doubts and that sort of thing. But it, you know, I felt that this would have been a great place to insert a great plot, maybe a kind of a twist in the game, a twist in the plot where you were against her as well. Or my mind had me thinking that the teacher was behind all of this, you know, because she had left, she didn't come back, she's the one that taught this pupil, they had read from the same book, you know, the Book of the Darned, and now they were trying to take over the world, but you just kind of find her, and, you know, she's turned into a gummy.
Idea. I like what you're thinking there, and it just seems like you don't get closure on anything.
No, you really don't.
So much is left up in the air.
I think with this game, I think it could have been, as far as theme-wise and ending, I thought it could have been really good. But I think that they really just, I don't want to, I guess I want to say, I feel like it was there. You know, all of that was there.
Just a missed opportunity.
It was. And surely I couldn't have been the only one playing this game that was thinking that way. I mean, I'm positive I couldn't have been. And it feels like that they just did not have the guts to pull the trigger on it. Or just, you know, just ended it too quickly. Because I thought that there was a lot lacking, you know, by the end of this game. And that was one of probably the most disappointing things for me. Because this game was 30 hours long. I put in about 30 hours in this game. And I think Dispose finished it in somewhere between 26, 27 hours, I think he said. And I think that there was, in finishing this game, there was a lot of emptiness. There was an empty feeling it finished. I was really happy that I finished it, but I really, looking back, I'm kind of like, wow, that was a blur. I really don't know what was going on with the plots. You know, I saved the teacher, but you know, I don't really understand what this game was about and what happened, and I felt
what the purpose of it was.
Exactly, and I felt that there was a lot of missed opportunity in this game for the designers, for the story writers.
So you were happy to finish it, but you weren't satisfied.
Right. Mm-hmm. I think that's
so
a good way to describe it.
So having said that, Rich, you mentioned something off the air, and it was actually mentioned on the thread about Disposed's comments about whether or not he would recommend the game. And I know you'll get to that, but would you recommend the game to a DS owner or an RPG fan?
Well, I think you make a good point there. Would I recommend it? I would have to know the gamer, first of all. I would have to know whether this is something that they could handle as far as the cutesiness of it. I did not feel like the game was very difficult. I didn't feel like the theme and the plot was very strong in it. So if someone's looking to play, someone's a very casual gamer, just wants kind of a fun, neat experience, wants something that's very hands-on and interactive, with the stylus that we were talking about, I think I could recommend this game to them. It's not one that I would say, put this game at the front of your list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree totally.
I would say pick it up because it's a cheap game. Put it in your collection. When you get around to it, play it. It's fun. It's worth a play. But I wouldn't overly recommend this game like certain other RPGs that I've played. So that's kind of where I stand out on it. I'll go ahead and read the comment by Disposed Hero. He said that these are his actual words. I wouldn't recommend Magical Starsign to anybody who's looking for a deep RPG experience, but for anyone looking for a more lighthearted and straightforward game, it's definitely worth checking out. This game was sitting on my shelf for months with me pretty much unaware of its existence, so this is yet another worthwhile game I probably would have missed out on if not for these playthroughs. And I think that's a super fair assessment of this game. And kind of goes back to what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not disappointed that I played it. I enjoyed playing it. The first game that I played on the DS, I'm happy, with the choice, and really glad that you had chose to for us to play it for this month. But as far as recommending it, it's probably something that I wouldn't, go out to certain people. There's a girl that works at the game store that I go to all the time, and I was telling her about playing it, and she really likes those type of cutesy type titles. She likes RPGs, so it would definitely, she fits in that box where as being someone I would recommend. I was like, okay, well if this comes in, you need to pick it up, and I told her about it. I was like, I think you'd really like this, and I think she would. But I think for a lot of other people, a lot of more serious RPG players who are really into like melee attacks and awesome weapons and things like that, I think this is more of a even by its title, a more magical game. You're using a lot of magic, and it's very magic based in the fighting and combat. So I think you have to have someone who's more prepared for that.
Good point. Because if I knew someone who played, let's say, Dark Souls or Persona or Final Fantasy, this game wouldn't appeal to them at all. But if they're more into like the lighthearted stuff, like let's say Kingdom Hearts, this would be up their alley.
Right. I definitely think so. How about you guys? I mean, from your experiences, is this something that either of you would recommend as far as playing?
You know what? For me, I feel like if you're a DS owner, there are a lot better RPGs that you could start with on the DS. There are tons of RPGs on the DS. Mm-hmm. I admittedly have not played a ton of them, but even out of the few that I've played, Magical Starsign would not be at the top of the list. But the one thing that it does have going for it is how cheap it is. A lot of RPGs on any system tend to hold their value or even go up in price if they had short print runs or something. But as we mentioned earlier, this game is really cheap. If you don't mind getting a loose copy, you can get it as cheaply as around $5. So that it does have going for it. And I would kind of echo what Disposed Hero said about if you're looking for a casual experience and a colorful kind of an easy game, then go for it. But I think also, to echo what he said and what we all said, is that the game is a little too long for what it should be. I mean, I think he was saying if the game was 15 hours, it would have been perfect. And I totally agree with that, because if it was 15 hours, I would have finished it. So,
yeah, I think that, you visit the planets once, then you have to go back and visit them again. It's a little redundant. The areas are different, but traveling that much and hopping around as much as you have to do.
Drawn out at times.
Yeah. I think we all play a lot of these kind of games that are nothing really special. They're not bad. It wasn't a bad game by any stretch, and it just wasn't anything special. It's an okay game. Like if you find a copy cheap at a flea market or at GameStop, grab it and you might enjoy it, but don't go out of your way to get it, and don't avoid it. It's a very I give just a very tepid recommendation of it.
Yeah.
I'd say
my thoughts exactly.
Yeah, I'd say probably around a 4 out of 10 is where I'd probably sit on this one. Not horrible, sort of right in the middle of the line, but not something that I would recommend to, everyone or even half the people that I know,
Yeah.
So, and I just want to kind of point out the people that we had playing this month. Shawn, of course, Grey Ghost 81 played. Myself, Singlebanana. Floyd, who's Fleach on the forums, also played. Disposed Hero, of course. And then Dougley 007 joined us too this month. So, big thanks to those guys for joining us. And from what I could tell from the forums, they actually enjoyed their experience playing the game.
Special thanks to those who joined us on this one, because I know we're really going out on a limb with kind of a niche title and a lesser known title. Right. So we appreciate those who joined us on this one.
All right. Well, guys, thanks a lot for joining me. And talking about Magical Starsign for the modern playthrough, plugging along with us in the game, and hope to see you next month as well. Thank you. Alright guys, thanks for listening to episode 2 of the RFGeneration Community playthrough. We'd like to thank everyone who participated this month, and a special thanks again to Terry, BSR241, for joining us in the Activision playthrough wrap-up there. And who knows, maybe one of you, maybe someone else will be asked to join us in the future. We hope so. We hope that you will join us on the forums and plug in, give us your 2 cents, and maybe that'll get you on the show at some point. For May, we've decided on playing, again, another modern game. Floyd will be hosting Lost in Shadow on the Wii, and I wanted him to go ahead and tell you a little bit about that.
All right, Lost in Shadow is a really unique approach at 2D platforming. Basically, you control main character's shadow, and so everything takes place in the background. So I'm really looking forward to this one. I hope you guys are going to play along.
All right, and for the retro playthrough, Jamie's going to be hosting Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2.
Yeah, so these are the classic SNES platformers. Donkey Kong's real debut as a strong Nintendo character, and something I'm really excited to play because it's been on my back burner for a long time, and I've had a friend infinitely recommending it, and now I'm finally getting a chance to play it, along with the whole community. So it'll be great.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys, for joining us, and appreciate you guys joining me on the podcast. A lot of fun, and looking forward to talking about those games in the near future. Thanks, guys. Happy gaming.